Welcome back to the Better Late Than Never live stream Tuesday night edition. I am Brian, your host for this evening. I am a black nerd, exennial age, so I'm in that Gen X, that midpoint between Gen X and millennial kind of space, and so I feel like I have a unique perspective. This is Blurting While Dad. I am a blurred. I'm also a dad, and um, this is kind of my space to talk about nerd related stuff and the other nerd interests I have, which is politics, journalism, gaming, pro wrestling, whatever crosses my mind. Um, Tonight's episode, we got a doozy. So I'm not gonna go into the first topic, but I do want to talk about some video game, some interesting things that in the video game space, some observations I have. Um, I want to do a words means things. We're also going to have a how effed are we segment that kind of merges into our character issues. So it's going to be a good time. All right. And we're going to talk about crossover events in Marvel as of late. I got a raft of issues with them. So top of the show, we're going to get into the thing. All right. So as it stands right now, we are kind of in this um, weird place from a political standpoint, ideological standpoint. We're at a couple of crossroads here. We find ourselves kind of at the mercy of a strangely misshapen, strangely colored man who is obsessed with spectacle, ratings, and public perception. He's kind of a gross individual. And we are kind of at his whim. He kind of if reality is not to his liking, he tends to try to reshape reality, and he almost has this toxifying um, presence where in his immediate environment, where things immediately become a lot more toxic when he's present. Y'all think I'm talking about Trump right now? I'm talking about Mojo, baby. Or am I talking about Trump? I'll let you call it. So we're talking about Mojo, X-Men stalwart. How's it going? Doing pretty good. So we're gonna be talking about Mojo, or I mean Donald J. Mojo, if you will. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of a backstory about the character's existence in Marvel comic books and draw some parallels. Hopefully, I'm not too on the nose, but we'll see what happens. All right. What Mojo actually is. Mojo is a media tyrant. He exists in the Mojo verse. And basically it's a world that is governed by television ratings. And we've seen so many iterations of Mojo. That here's the thing. If Mojo did not exist before the last two elections, there would have been if he didn't exist before the last two elections, I would think that he is derived and kind of a spoof on our current president, because that's kind of who he is. That's what we're dealing with. We're living in the Mojo verse, if you will. And it may not be fun, but it is what it is. And so I think we just need to adjust to the chaos as it is. Okay. So Mojo's a media tyrant. He rules an entire dimension that's dominated by television ratings. He doesn't really care about truth, morality, or outcomes. The biggest thing is the spectacle. If he is the center of attention, that is everything. And so that is his modus operandi. So when you see him in these X-Men books and everything, he treats the X-Men kind of like they're extras on his television show, because they really are. And a lot of times it's a fatal outcome. You know, he doesn't care who he kills as long as he gets good ratings. And I picked up in my history with the character Mojo. I wasn't necessarily fully aware of the character in the 80s. When Longshot and them came out, when the Longshot limited series kind of dropped and everything. I discovered Mojo after I jumped back on, after Chris Claremont came back to X-Men. And so my viewpoint of Mojo is really filtered through that 90s era X-Men lens. And so I'm kind of throwing that out as a caveat here. So if my viewpoint of him seems imprecise, I'm really basing a lot of my formative knowledge on Mojo. And the books I've mostly read were kind of those 90 era, Jim Lee, Chris Claremont, X-Men, that time frame when they rebooted the franchise. Okay. So Mojo rules an entire dimension run by ratings. He only cares about attention and reaction. He cares about how his audience reacts and responds to uh, the spectacles that he creates. And he's done a lot. Like the X Babies is kind of this ongoing thing where he's decided to create miniature versions of the X-Men because those are his, like, I mean, that's his best, consistently his best ratings. And so he's created the X Babies, and typically there's always there's like 5 or 6 different versions and iterations of the X Babies. Okay. Um, and it seems like it's fun until people start dying. And the crazy part about Mojo is if he was a little bit more serious, he would be like this extinction level crossover villain level threat. And I know that he's had a couple of short runs there, but if he was really focused on, if he was really locked in and focused, in terms of the wanton destruction that he lays down, um, he would be perfectly one. He's a perfectly analogous to Trump. Like that's him. Mojo is Trump. But also, if they really locked him in and dialed him in, we might get the Norman Osborn treatment. Like what happens when Norman Osborn breaks containment in the Spider-Man universe is he typically takes over the United States. Like last time they took the off the ball with Norman Osborn, he took over Shield and essentially took over the United States. And Mojo has that in him. But the power structures were based on the television industry, and Mojo became their leader by controlling it. He also has a slave trade, but Mojo named the world's Mojo World and the universe the Mojo Verse. He has different followers, different, like the War Wolves. I know there was Mojo 2, the sequel, who is more of a attractive version of Mojo. And so he warps reality to meet the needs of his audience. Okay. And so the thing that he forces is this constant reaction. And that's the world we're existing in right now, where we're constantly forced to react to the administration. They will not leave us alone. It's kind of like this barrage, this blitz of events and spectacle and weird, goofy shit that's happening. And we're constantly in this mode of either we're reacting to it or responding to it or we're arguing about it. And that's the world Mojo creates. It gives him power. If we're looking at the analogies, the amount of attention that we paid, the amount of attention that the Mojo world has to pay to it, to Mojo is the thing that gives him power. The amount of attention that we have to pay to the administration, it's kind of what gives them power. It makes them feel omnipresent, even if it's not necessarily a competent form of omnipresence. It's omnipresent. They're everywhere. You can't get away from them. They're always in the news cycle somewhere. If something comes out that's not necessarily positive, there's going to be some crazy, out of control, wild shit that happens over here that the cameras have to look at. And so that we're blowing up ships down in the Caribbean because of Epstein stuff. Like we're gonna do some redirection over here, and people are actually dying. There are real life stakes for the spectacle that we're creating. Okay. So this is how Mojo controls the reality in the Mojo verse. Constantly rewrites outcomes through framing, the way he frames these events. Even if it doesn't look good for him, he's able to frame them in a way to make it seem like he's the victor. And he turns suffering into content. And I think maybe that's the biggest piece that we need to look at, what we're dealing with right here. We're talking about life in the Mojo verse, which we're kind of living right now. Let me get this gentleman off the screen here. So life in the Mojo verse, we are seeing suffering as spectacle, suffering as entertainment. The cutesy memes around the ICE raids, the fact that they constantly go to these pop artists and steal their songs, and the pop artists have to come out loudly and disavow disavow what the administration is doing. That spectacle, that is suffering as entertainment. The idea that owning the libs or owning the leftists, um, and inflicting maximum pain on those people over there. That's entertainment for a large swath of this country. And I don't know if we ever come back from that. I really don't. Where we use like this grotesque, we are going to punish these people and then laugh at them because they voted against us. That's I think that's kind of ingrained in our society right now. I don't think it goes away. Okay. Um, and legitimacy comes from the visibility, not the competence. As it stands right now in Mojo World, um, the more visible, the more people that tune in to see you, that is the thing that elevates you in the Mojoverse. In this country, we've elevated people who don't really need to be elevated. Like all these weird reality TV show stars are currently like making decisions for us. Dr. Oz. Like Dr. Oz. I'm surprised Dr. Phil. Well, Dr. Phil has rode along with ICE. What am I saying? So we're seeing these reality people that are in the orbit of this administration. They aren't necessarily the most competent, but they're most television and media savvy. And as a result of that, that's who gets to determine what's allowed in your children's food, what our medical policy is moving forward. It's not necessarily people that are most qualified to do it, it's the people that are best on camera. And that's the world we currently exist in. Okay. Couple of thematic things with Mojo. The grotesque body is kind of this visual metaphor for overconsumption. Understand that this was a character, I believe Mojo was written in the 80s, and I think he was the villain of Long Shot, if I'm not mistaken, 1985. For those that weren't alive during the Reagan era, I need you to understand something. Reagan era was for white folks. Reagan was really defined in the for black community. We were still dealing with a lot of like the crack epidemic, a lot of other things that were kind of ravaging our community, and still coming out of that post civil rights era world and kind of calibrating ourselves. We're only like 20 some odd years, or we were only like at that point 20 some odd years removed from segregation, and so we're finding our spots in American society, and also kind of establishing ourselves along the socioeconomic strata of America. 80s mainstream white America, the Gordon Gecko America, really the me generation, overconsumption, living way above your means, he who dies with the most toys wins kind of mentality. And Mojo kind of represented that. He was a visual representation of gross overconsumption of everything. Everything that exists: overconsumption of food, overconsumption of drugs, overconsumption of goods and services. And that's what he was, a visual form. He represented the 80s in a visual form. And now he seems to be representing the 2000s in a presidential form. So, but in Mojo World, ratings equal authority. Spectacle is more important than leadership. Am I able to create the most compelling visual spectacle? Am I able to get people to pay attention to me? Why do you think everything is named after? Like, we have to name everything after our current the head of our current administration. I'm trying not to say his name too much because I don't want to sit here and argue with his stands in my comments. I really don't. I dealt with one of them this morning. Shout out to you, sir. Hopefully you can find gainful employment after being racist on Facebook. Maybe there's a lesson in that. Go play with somebody else. So reaction is power, and exhaustion is kind of the byproduct. You see when you do get a chance to see the denizens of Mojo World, one, they're kind of like exhausted, like there's this weird fatigue, and it comes from constantly having spectacle kind of crammed down your throat. That is not a way to live. Turning on the TV and kind of turning on the TV news and seeing what catastrophe is about to happen is exhausting on people. And I think that's the world that we've kind of adjusted to, where and it happened last time we had the same clown show in office. We were constantly blitzed and bombarded with all of this bad news and all of these weird things, all these unprecedented things, constitutional crisis after constitutional crisis. Um, at some point, you just become desensitized to a lot of that stuff. And that's scary to kind of see where we exist or where we are in this country, where we're going to be a year into this in a couple of weeks. And a lot of people are already fatigued by the constant blitz of attention and things that we have to pay attention to. Okay. But so Trump kind of exists as the function of Mojo. He is the Mojo of our country, where it's always compelling television. Everything is aligned with being in front of a camera. And um, if you can't tell, look at all the plastic surgery that's going on. All of these people that they're positioning in front of us, in front of the camera, they're also, um, they also have a certain look where you can look at them on camera too, or they have experience in television. Okay. But who controls what gets shown at all. And so I think that's the place we're at in this country. And I'm really fascinated to see what happens after this. Where do we go after this? Okay. What do we do? Where does the country head after we have essentially turned our entire country into a reality television show? What happens? We're already experiencing, and I think I got it in my show notes to talk about this later. Like what happens when the administration gets its hooks into our mainstream media. Not talking about Fox. Um, what happens when they actually get a seat at the table of like a CBS or an NBC or ABC? And we're already starting to see it. I think ABC had that lawsuit that they paid off for him. Um, we're already starting to see CBS has Barry Weiss as their editor in chief. And they spiked a story on 60 Minutes that showed the U.S. in a bad light regarding our treatment of people that we deported from Venezuela. We deported them to El Salvador, I think. And those El Salvadorian prisons are like big torture factories. And there was a story on 60 Minutes. I was actually interviewing people that had been tortured and abused and molested by these prison officials and stuff. And she spiked the story. And she spiked the story because her thing was, well, we couldn't get the administration to comment on it. And so they spiked the story until they can get the administration's comment. And I can tell you that that's not a thing that happens. Just because, if there's an issue on the local news, if the police don't want to comment, they don't not run the story. They still run the story and kind of put the caveat in. We reached out to this person for comment and we have yet to hear back. So if the administration gets veto power on our stories, what does that mean? It means that Mojo is in control of our news. The administration kind of gets to determine. And I'm skipping a whole lot because Mojo's history is long. And he's kind of a recurring theme in the X-Men. Whenever it's almost like the way Mojo comes across is whenever they kind of need a break from whatever is going on or the heaviness of the books, they bring Mojo in to kind of break the ice up. And yes, his stories are harrowing. Yes, there is some very kind of horrific things that happen in his books, but it's a little bit more lighthearted than your typical X-Men fare, where X-Men always seem to be drifting from tragedy to tragedy to tragedy. I'm trying to save something in the tank because I'm actually going to do a full-blown character issues on Mojo. And so I have a lot of stuff written, and so I'm not trying to take too much from that. But I'm just saying that we are existing in the Mojo verse right now. That's all we can say. So I'm just interested to see how we make it through the next, 3 years of this? Okay. So if Mojo is real, the question isn't who's lying, it's who gets shown it all. If only the people that are lying if the people who are lying are the only ones that get on television, how do we ever know what the truth is? It warps reality in a sense. So I'm going to do a full-blown character issues on Mojo. I have some stuff written already for it. And I'm going to do that on a separate episode of this because I want to give enough time to it. And I got a lot of other things that I want to get into tonight. All right. Let's talk the aftermath of One World Under Doom. Um, for those that don't know, and I'm gonna pull it up on the screen, One World Under Doom has been Marvel's one of their big crossover events this year, and essentially the concept is, what happens if Doctor Doom wins, where everything goes right and Doctor Doom wins. And so in One World Under Doom, Doctor Doom actually won. He ended up becoming Sorcerer Supreme. I forgot what it was. I think it was Blood Hunt. I think he tricked Doctor Strange out of the Sorcerer Supreme mantle to end Blood Hunt, which is another one of those stories that didn't necessarily change the status quo, that consumed all the Marvel books. And it's becoming kind of a theme. But anyway, so Doctor Doom won. He became Sorcerer Supreme of this dimension. And it kind of shows his ascension and rise to power and basically how he took over the world and how he controls it. Now he's basically reshaping the world in his image. So I'm gonna put this up on the screen. And the thing I'm gonna put up on the screen is endemic of the problem of what one of my problems with this miniseries. One, it was overlong. Like it would not end. And I know they had some delays mixed in there, but it ran too long. It felt like they were stretching. They were just stretching to try to have a story. So this is the cover for One World Under Doom. This is number 6. I don't know if this is the penultimate issue or not, but as you can see, he's giving Reed Richards the business. And that's one of my issues with One World Under Doom. I don't mind. I love the fact that Doctor Doom basically took over the country, took over the world, and created this utopia. And people were actually happy. People were thriving to a degree. I mean, it took a dark turn around issue 6, if I'm not mistaken. But the world was better. Education was free. You could go to school you can get, the minimum was a master's degree. And if you wanted to go further, all you had to do was ask. Free healthcare. No wars. Unlimited access to technology, like a free basic standard of living for every man, woman, and child on the planet. Like Dr. Doom was really hitting it out of the park, like to the point where I'm like, I would vote for Dr. Doom tomorrow. After One World Under Doom #1, I'm like, oh yeah, let's put Doom in office. How much worse can it get? And to be honest with you, it didn't get too bad for your regular average run-of-the-mill citizens in One World Under Doom, unless you lived in Latveria. If you lived in Latveria, it was terrible. But if you were anywhere else, it was pretty good. And if you weren't a superhero, you were doing all right. But Dr. Doom took over the country, took over the world, and ended all wars, gave free healthcare and education to every man, woman, and child, and provided a good standard of living for people. And so that's how he got the entire world on his side. And basically, he used that as a framing device to kind of juxtapose it against the Avengers and the Fantastic Four, saying, yeah, they solved the problems, but we're always dealing with more issues. They never permanently solve anything. And now they're trying to dispose me, and I'm the one that gave you free healthcare and, almost magic level healthcare and free education, compulsory education, all the way up until your master's degree. And so he gave all that to people. And so he used that as leverage to kind of frame the superheroes as the bad guys, like, hey, they're trying to stop me from doing all this. And it was a good framing device to start out with, y'all. Like it wasn't bad. It was enjoyable twist. Here's what my issue was. It started getting long. And when I say started getting long, okay, so now the heroes are going to thwart Doom. And they try to thwart Doom in one issue. And Doom embarrasses them. Okay. Let's move on. They're going to thwart Doom in the next issue. And Doom embarrasses them. And it became the cycle of heroes, the Avengers, Fantastic Four, all these heroes basically being this job squad for Doctor Doom, which I appreciate. Doctor Doom's one of my favorite characters, but you only can show that shit so many times before people start like, oh, okay, enough is enough. And this was kind of the issue that kind of like completely shut me down on it. This is issue number 6, I believe. And so finally, Reed Richards decides that he's going to take it to Doctor Doom, and Reed Richards is going to learn magic, and he's going to fight Doctor Doom and whatnot. Now, Doctor Doom had already saved the planet from Dormammu. He had the 8 Lives of Spider-Man, if I'm not mistaken, and made Spider-Man kind of his apprentice sorcerer supreme to prevent Sidorak from taking over the world. And so he had done a lot of other stuff. And there were some really interesting things that happened in there that they have no bearing on anything. Like even the Spider-Man story, which started out dope, it became this weird thing. Like Spider-Man had to fight all the kids of Sidorak, and each one of them had a different skill or ability. And one of them had the ability to make him see the future. And she basically, and I'm paraphrasing a lot here, but basically she handed him this orb, and it showed him the death of everybody that he loves. And it showed it to him for years. It showed him like this insanely inordinate amount of time of people that he loves dying and all the different ways they could die. And when Doctor Strange had to do it, because Doctor Strange used to have to do that as part of this thing where he had this pact that they made with Sidorak, where he had to defeat Sidorak's children in order to keep Sidorak from invading. Doctor Strange, when he did it, he held the orb. He only held it for a couple of minutes. Spider-Man held it for some insanely long time. And so what happened was it showed Spider-Man with this weird PTSD. And Spider-Man's manifestation of it was kind of like, fuck it now. Like he didn't care about, like, he's like, what's the point of any of this? And so he became this really nihilistic, pessimistic version of Spider-Man. Ruined his relationships, of course. He wasn't saving lives anymore, and he couldn't be jarred out of it. He was letting people die left and right. And it was really this weird twist on Spider-Man that would have worked if it only lasted for a couple of panels, but we're talking about multiple books here. And that was kind of the theme of One World Under Doom. It just lasts too long. And there's nothing happening that's engaging. Okay? So Doom reshapes the world. Doom positions himself as inevitable. He becomes like, nothing defeats him and stuff like that. And he's written as overwhelmingly powerful, which makes sense because he controls the earth. But there's no real counterplay to him. Like every single hero looked like a bumbling idiot. Every single one. Not one of them looked competent. And I get it, maybe the first go around, Doom, Doom zigs while you zag. He catches you unawares, defeats you soundly, sends the heroes packing. You only can do that so many times before the heroes just look ineffectual. And I'm sorry, I grew up on Fantastic Four books. For me, the natural counter to Doctor Doom has always been Reed Richards and the Fantastic Four. They've always been kind of his mental blind spot. While he's super competent, kind of like how for Norman Osborn, Spider-Man's his mental blind spot when Norman Osborn's evil. Right now, he's not. We'll see how long that lasts. When Magneto is evil, X-Men are kind of like his hedge, like the mental blind spot that he has, where they just know how to beat him, and everybody else kind of succumbs to him. I'll never forget. I had an issue with West Coast Avengers where the Avengers tried to go deal with. Well, the West Coast Avengers went to go deal with Magneto, and they got their asses whooped. Like beat Wonder Man into a coma. Like it was bad. And that was kind of the way it was set up. Everybody else has trouble with Doctor Doom, but the Fantastic Four are the ones you call in to kind of beat him because they kind of got his card. In this book, all that stuff was off the table. And it's hard to reposition the Fantastic Four as really in like they didn't make the slightest bit of difference in this story, to the point where you're like, why were they even in here? They just look like idiots. And the end of it, I don't know if y'all want spoilers or not. So if you don't want to be spoiled on it, go ahead and click off now. If you don't want to be spoiled on what happens at the end of One World Under Doom, what wraps this all up and how Doom is defeated, Go ahead and click off now. I'll give you about 5 seconds while I pull up the rest of my notes. Okay. So there was no real counterplay against Doom. The heroes had no agency. And all the tension goes away because you're like, they're going to lose anyway. The only thing that defeated Doom in One World Under Doom was, of course, Doom, which is typical thematic element of Doctor Doom when he's going against Fantastic Four. Typically, Reed is able to exploit some loophole that Doom overlooked. Fantastic Four are able to come out victorious. Okay, cool. This one was just Doom accidentally killed Valeria Richards. In his hubris, he wanted to inflict maximum pain on the heroes. He exploded this thing, and it was supposed to send magic shrapnel into the heroes, and it wasn't supposed to kill any of them, but it was supposed to injure and incapacitate them so that they would know that they came up against Doom and they wouldn't do it again. Well, apparently Valeria Richards teleported, and Valeria Richards, if you don't know, I need to pull up a picture of her. She's actually named, I think, after Dr. Doom's one of his exes, one of his lovers, or is it mom? I think it might be his mom. But Valeria Richards is Dr. Doom's goddaughter, essentially. And so she is also the daughter of Reed and Susan Richards. Okay. And so Valeria Richards is a child prodigy. She's as smart as Reed is at her current age. And she's about the only thing on the planet that Dr. Doom like values, the only person. I think he might value his son Christoph, his adopted son. But as it stands, Valeria Richards is really the only thing in this retelling that Doom actually cares about. And so he accidentally killed her. And the other side to it is Dr. Doom made this terminal loophole where you can't undo what he did to the heroes because he didn't want anybody to go do time shenanigans and undo the defeat that they had. He wanted them to experience that defeat in every time somebody rewound time, he would be victorious. And so that was the kind of the thing. And so Valeria Richards ends up, doing the sacrifice thing. And now Dr. Doom's feeling bad. And then he goes off to, I think it was Eternity or the Living Tribunal, demands an audience with him, and that's kind of the end of the story. And it leads into the last will and testament of Dr. Doom, where he sent his will and testament to Dr. Doom. And I just heard the preview of that, and so I kind of know what goes on in that book, but I'm not going to spoil it for y'all. Here's what my issue of this is. Okay, when it comes to Dr. Doom, I like the fact that the Fantastic Four are the buffer against him, because if they aren't the buffer if they're not the hedge against Dr. Doom, then what do they exist for in a Dr. Doom book? Okay. It's kind of the problem that sometimes Araki got into with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, where he kind of writes himself into a corner because the villain is so overwhelming and the odds are so stacked against the heroes. And the only solution is some kind of divine intervention where the stars align. Joseph takes the ruby and puts it in front of Kars's hand, and that shoots him into space. Like some amazing, unbelievable circumstance that is like this Deus Ex Machina that changes the story. And JoJo used that kind of as a plot device. It kind of ended up becoming this meme within JoJo. Like, okay, so, and I'm really in my nerd bag here. Okay, so Dio has the world. Well, we got Star Platinum over here. Well, how's Star Platinum going to defeat somebody who can stop time? Well, he's going to learn how to stop time himself. How? Reasons. Let's just run with it. And so that's kind of what happened in One World Under Doom, where he's so overwhelming, he's so powerful, and the heroes, all the heroes' best interest, nobody can stop him. Doctor Strange can't do anything to him. Reed Richards can't do anything to him, and he ends up stopping himself, which is a kind of theme with Doctor Doom. I get it, but to make Reed and them and the Avengers and Tony Stark and all of them so ineffectual, almost like why we didn't have them in the story. Okay, why even have them in the story? Because it doesn't matter anymore at that point. When I was reading Spider-Man, with Spider-Man's crossover One World Under Doom, at least you felt like Peter did something, like Peter figured some things out, problem solved, and was able to win the day convincingly. Now they did have a Deus Machina where Juggernaut and the X-Men just show up, and so you had to deal with Juggernaut helping out Spider-Man, and then Spider-Man became the Spider Juggernaut, which was one of the dopest things I've ever seen in my life, and I need a run of that. But um, at least Spider-Man figures shit out. One World Under Doom, Doctor Doom defeated himself. I'm not saying that's a problem. He does that all the time. But normally it involves Reed and the Fantastic Four exploiting some mistake that Doom overlooked because of his hubris. Okay. But Doom losing to himself is consistent. That's what did work. Doom defeating Doom absolutely makes sense. Doom's arrogance and over optimization always outdo him. I get that. What didn't land, the Fantastic Four were completely jobbed out. Like they had no purpose and no utility in that story. They didn't do a damn thing. It was embarrassing. Reed Richards is completely ineffective. He gets sunned so bad and so hard in this story. As you can see, look, like this cover, normally the cover kind of exaggerates. This is what happened to him. Reed got his ass whooped when he faced Doom in this. And this wasn't like beginning of the book or we're establishing Doom's level of threat. This is as the book is winding down. Okay. I think this is the book where they kind of exposed that Doom was utilizing the citizens of Latveria as his magic source, which is also kind of inconsistently framed with who he is as a character, because he's always valued Latveria more than anything else. And so if there was if he was going to subjugate a population and use them as a magic source, it would be anywhere but Latveria. And I don't know, as protective as he is over that country, I don't know that he would subject the citizens to that. I believe that they would be living better than just about anybody. Okay. Marvel's supposed answer to Doom is kind of treated like a liability, like with Reed and stuff. Valeria didn't necessarily even outsmart him. She just died. And that was the thing that kind of woke him up and snapped him out of it. And it was really a missed opportunity to frame Reed versus Doom as ideological opposites. We kind of came in and framed Reed as subservient to Dr. Doom. And that's not how us as the readers are supposed to view that relationship. We're supposed to view them as equals. Dr. Doom is supposed to see Reed as his lackey or his subservient one. And so the moments where Dr. Doom actually admits that Reed is smarter than him are supposed to be jarring for him. Like what happened in Secret Wars, where Doom admitted that Reed would have been the better choice. That was a damning admission for Dr. Doom to make. Narratively, from the history of this character, that is something that would not happen, or it only happens in extreme situations where he admits that Dr. Doom is the better, or Reed is the better person to handle that specific situation. That shouldn't happen. Okay. And so the problem isn't that Doom won, it's that nobody else mattered when he did. Like the heroes didn't do anything. They shouldn't. What were they even in the book for? I don't even know why the Avengers and Fantastic Four were even in the book, aside from being they've been targets to get beat up, and it bleeds over into a larger problem that Marvel has with these events. The mainline Marvel events have been kind of ass. Like they've been mildly cheeks. Like I don't know how else to say it. The mainline Marvel, and I don't like to crap on any creators or anything along those lines. I don't want to belittle their work. I think it might be editorial stuff to make sure the books align with what they're doing in the movie universe. But the Marvel's mainline crossover events have been cheeks, like the last couple of, like they haven't been good. The gang war thing was abysmal. Gang wars sucked. It was terrible. I don't even know what the purpose was. One World Under Doom started out promising and really petered out. Age of Revelations is also mildly cheeks. I know that they wanted to do something special for Age of Apocalypse's anniversary. This was not it. It's not it. I contend that if you're not familiar with Age of Revelations, I talked about it last week. Age of Revelations is the X-Men story that they're putting all the X-Men books on hold for so they can tell this alternate version of X-Men. And I found out they're not doing what Sins of Sinister did, where they go 10, 100,000 years in the future. Which is really fortunate because that ended up destroying Sins of Sinister in my eyes. But Age of Revelations is this. So they found Apocalypse, leading up to it. Apocalypse had to find an heir to his legacy. Ended up being Cypher for some reason. And so Cypher ended up getting, I don't know if Apocalypse gave him some of his powers or gave him a death seed or something. But they leveled up Cypher in this massive way. And I know it's supposed to be a curveball, supposed to be a swerve, because Cypher's abilities aren't necessarily his mutant ability wasn't tied to any real combat. It was being able to interpret different types of language, and he could use that for different effects. But in order to be really, really super useful in actual combat, he had to have Warlock with him. Warlock is kind of this techno-organic alien that was basically Cypher's best friend, and Warlock allowed him to be more active on the field, and it was kind of like this bromance kind of thing where they're homies. So for me, it doesn't, like, the mainline Marvel crossovers don't feel like there's any stakes, or if they do introduce stakes, it's going to be tidied up so that we can get right back to the main stories. And it doesn't feel like any of the stuff lasts. Like Blood Hunt did have a residual effect by making Doctor Doom Sorcerer Supreme, and that's about it. I don't know. I fell off of the Blade books because I just got, like, to be honest with you, Blood Hunt completely put me off of the Blade books. Watching Blade like solo the Avengers was absolutely mind melting. And I'm like, nope, fuck this. I'm not gonna do this to myself. I'll pick this up later. um, and I love Blade, but him soloing the Avengers, and come to find out it wasn't Blade, which I predicted. Like, it's not Blade, it's somebody else. He's being inhabited by the spirit of, was it Varanki, or I don't know, it was some ancient vampire from the old Marvel monster books. And so the only stakes that we got that translated to the mainline universe was Doctor Doom becomes Sorcerer Supreme in the Bloodline event. And I don't know if they got rid of Dracula, if they reintroduced Dracula as a threat in the Marvel universe or not. But long story short, mainline events feel completely disposable. They feel like they don't really serve any purpose. They don't move the story forward. They don't reestablish status quos. They don't reset the universe. They don't do anything. The last reset that we had to the mainline Marvel universe was that Secret Wars thing. And maybe there's a backlash to that because, yeah, Secret Wars was interesting. And I think they did some interesting things, but I think that Marvel's kind of shied away from these ones that actually impact the main 616 as much, and they save a lot of the major crossovers that have real stakes for the new version of the Ultimates universe, which is 6160. Because the stuff over happening in the Ultimate Marvel universe right now, the new Ultimate Marvel universe, is really, really dope. I think that was going. I didn't necessarily think that was going to be the case. I think I kicked myself out for a second. I didn't think that was going to be the case. I did not see myself enjoying the new Ultimates as much as I do now, and I think it was because of how the original Ultimates ended. Ultimates 3, which is an awful book, in every way, shape, or form. Putrid, just a terrible book. Ultimatum was one of the worst events I've ever experienced. It soured a lot of people on it. Soured me on the concept of the Ultimate Universe. And Ultimate Universe was doing it itself. Like, there was a lot of Mark Miller bullshit that was tied up in that. Where it's edgy for the sake of edgy. We're gonna make was it Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver? Yes, they're twins, but they're also in an incestuous relationship. We don't ever need to see that again. Don't ever do that again. Making Wolverine like this weird, creepy perv. You know, there's a lot of things that didn't necessarily align in the Ultimates universe, and so it left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth. So when they rebooted it initially, I was really hesitant on it. But the new Ultimate Spider-Man is dope. The new Ultimates is really, really good. And they're having the big crossover event where the maker, who is basically and I'm trying, my boy Fearless put me onto this. He said, put these people on the screen so we know what we're talking about. The maker, who is basically what happens if Reed Richards from the Fantastic Four was Doctor Doom. He's basically an evil version of Reed Richards. He's about to emerge from being in prison for, you know, a year, and the superheroes in that Ultimates universe are getting prepared for his return, and there's a lot of stakes going on. They risk annihilation because of what he's building. um and what the maker did in that universe is he went back and made and changed all the events to make sure, basically, if you've ever read was it The Nail in DC, where what happens if a nail delays Superman from getting picked up by the Kents, and we basically exist in a world without Superman. That's kind of what happened. The maker went to that specific version of Earth of in Marvel and prevented every single superhero from attaining their powers, altered things, killed people. If he needed to, he killed people, but he made sure that they did not become the mainline versions of the heroes. And so the entire story of the Ultimates is they found out what he did, and then they're going back and fixing it and giving these people power. So like Spider-Man gets his powers as an adult with kids and a wife. And it's a really interesting story. Like it's probably better than a lot of other things that are Marvel is doing right now. um Ultimate Black Panther took a little bit to get his feet under it. I don't necessarily know what its purpose is. I'm gonna put the maker up on the screen. Um, I don't necessarily know what its purpose is right now. But we'll see. Like I said, let me go ahead and remove that. That's the maker. That is the evil version of Reed Richards. And left to his own devices, this is Reed Richards with no morals. So when he first appeared, like he was doing brain surgery on Tony Stark while Tony Stark's still alive. Just really an awful morals off version of Reed Richards. And so this is who is the main villain in the current Ultimates universe, and it's really good. I like it. I know that there's going to be stakes. There's going to be universe shifting stakes in as a result at the end of what's ever happening with in the new Ultimates universe. I cannot say the same for One World Under Doom or a lot of these other Marvel events. Age of Revelations, when they finish the Age of Revelation, it's going to stop, and they're going to go back to the mainline X-Men books, and it'll be like it never happened because it's kind of told in the alternate future. So they're setting up each crossover event that they shut down entire arms, like they'll shut down all the X-Men books to tell this one Age of Revelation stories, and then nothing of value happens that affects the X-Men stories moving forward. I know the current editor of the X-Men arm of Marvel hated or wasn't a big fan of the Krakoa era, but it's better than what this mess has been. And if we're going to continue to do stuff with the X-Men after this, can we please not crap on the Krakoa era as much? It's the ending sucked. The way it ended sucked. But I know, was it Tom Bavort? He wasn't a huge fan of it or whatever. The X-Men books have been bad. Age Revelations is no exception. Like I said, mildly cheeks. It started out promising, and then it took a hard left turn. And so we're about to wrap this thing up, hopefully, and be done with it. But this has been endemic of all these Marvel crossovers as of late. They mean nothing. In the mainline universe, in the 616, crossover events don't mean a fucking thing. They don't. They have no stakes. They happen, and then it's over with. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, you have DC crossover events, where DC crossover events, every single time they have a crossover event, they reset the universe. And I think it's just become part of how they do things. When they have one of these crisis events, Um, like right now they're doing the King Omega stuff, which surprisingly is really good. Like I'm giving credit where credit's due. I thought I wouldn't like it, but I'm really enjoying the DCKO King Omega event. But DC every couple of years they just said, okay, we need to refresh this, reset the universe, let's start over again, and that's how they keep it. In their mind, that's how they keep it fresh. I think they're going to end up running out of events to come in because every single time you have a new big bad. I'm kind of happy that they put Darkseid as the center point of this one because I feel like my boy's been getting slept on for the last couple of years. But I'd rather have that where the crossover event has some kind of impact on the reality afterwards than this Marvel thing where, yeah, it just happened. Doom took over the planet, and yeah, everything's cool now. Why did I waste a year reading this? Because that's what it feels like. So Marvel's events don't matter. They don't reshape the universe. They don't establish any pillars. Like we had a good chance to reestablish after the Fantastic Four had been out of the spotlight for a couple of years. We had the movie drop. The movie didn't do what they wanted to do. That's fine. But we can reestablish them as pillars central to the Marvel universe or Marvel's first family. They're one of the very first, most important superhero teams in comic books. They weren't established as pillars. They didn't have any effect in this event. They did nothing. The only thing that happened was Valeria got killed accidentally and Doctor Doom stopped himself. We missed opportunity to establish them as pillars. Whenever you have a crossover event, in my opinion, when you have a crossover event, that crossover event should be used to elevate a hero or villain. Ideally, both, but specifically the hero that is central to overcoming what the crossover villain is doing should be elevated. That's not happening. That's not happening in Marvel. Even this entire latest galactic thing it wasn't Annihilation. I forgot what it was. But it was their cosmic event. Imperial. It didn't feel like anything happened. It reestablished a couple of things. We have Black Panther who's out doing the intergalactic, the intergalactic, what is it? Wakanda, intergalactic Wakanda, whatever. And it established a couple of new norms for like Nova and them, which is good. I'm not gonna crap on that. And I'm thinking about it. It wasn't too terrible. Imperial actually did reset some things cosmically, and I do wish they would just go back to the Nova Corps and like reestablish that because I'm tired of Nova as this solo thing. I know that the Green Lantern slander about the Nova Corps is out there, but I do think that making Nova the head of the Nova Corps and putting them through their paces is an interesting story waiting to happen. Right now, they got Nova as hero for hire, which is actually kind of dope in the Nova stories, but it reestablished him. So I'm not complaining. I'm not gonna slander Imperial too much. But the other ones that came out this year with Blood Hunt and this One World Under Doom mess, don't do this again, Marvel, please. If you're gonna do it, if you're gonna have a crossover thing, elevate somebody, make somebody important, make somebody feel important, make a hero feel important or a villain feel menacing. And you're not necessarily doing that on the hero side. You're making the villains menacing and then the heroes just kind of like bleh. They don't have lasting consequences. Okay. So what Marvel needs to do is clarify who matters in the story. In One World Under Doom, the most important people in a One World Under Doom story should have been the Fantastic Four. That should have been it. And I know Valeria Richards was a central character. And I understand how they kind of made her the centerpiece of it, but it wasn't like a good necessarily showing for her either. She showed up and died, and her death inspired Doom to change everything. Just wasn't a good story. You clarify who matters. Just like in Dark Reign and Siege, the person to take down Norman Osborn should have been Spider-Man. There's no reason why it shouldn't have been Spider-Man. It's the only thing that makes narrative sense. Norman Osborn's out of control. The only person that has been able to defeat him is Spider-Man. We saw it in Superior Spider-Man when Doc Ock had to finally relinquish Peter's body, give it back to him. And instantly, as soon as Spider-Man started talking shit, Norman Osborn knew. As soon as Spider-Man started talking his shit, Norman Osborn knew that he was dealing with Peter. The whole time he had this sense that it wasn't Peter in the suit. And that was a really good narrative beat. Let me see. Norman, Spider-Man, or Peter returns. Yeah, Peter, typing this in, returns. Superior Spider-Man. Because what happened was Doc Ock is getting his ass whooped. And he cannot overcome Green Goblin. Green Goblin is about to hurt the woman that he loves. And he finally goes back to Peter and says, I need you to take over. And he admitted that Peter was the superior version of Spider-Man, which was kind of the whole crux of the story. It was initially that, here it is. I'm pulling it up on the screen so you can kind of see the interplay. Because I think that from a storytelling standpoint, this is about as good as you can get in terms of telling the dynamic between Green Goblin and Peter Parker, or Norman Osborn, Green Goblin, Spider-Man, Norman Osborn, Peter Parker, to show what that dynamic looks like. So I'm gonna share this with you. Okay. This is how you establish when you're doing one of these one of these events that kind of dominate a series or change the status quo. This is how you do it. Okay. The entire time Norman Osborn's talking all kinds of shit to Spider-Man, knowing that it's not Peter in that body, it's somebody else. And Dr. Octopus could not find a way to defeat him and save the girl, the lady that he's in a relationship with. He had to relinquish the body back to Peter. Norman Osborn says something and Peter hits him with one of them shit talking things. Told Norman he's carrying a man purse, and instantly you see it's you. He knew immediately that he's dealing with Spider-Man. And instantly when Spider-Man and Norman Osborn are fighting, all of Norman Osborn's advantages are removed, which is not normally the case for when Norman Osborn took over the Marvel Universe, essentially during Dark Reign. That's what you do. If you're having a crossover event, you're going to elevate Norman Osborn to this high level. Spider-Man, Peter Parker needs to be his foil. Narratively, that's what makes sense. Having Iron Man take out Norman Osborn, or Iron Man and Thor take out Norman Osborn, I don't know what we're doing here. I don't know what we're doing here. So, and I'm not making sure because I want to make sure I'm not tripping because it's been a while since I read. Siege was one of those that pissed me off because it killed Ares, and Ares was like one of my favorite reinventions of a character in Dark or in Siege. The Siege of Asgard, defeated by the Avengers. Should have been Spider-Man. Not a doubt in my mind it should have been Spider-Man. So you use it to establish, like, okay, who's the most important foil in this story? Fantastic Four. We need to find a way to make sure that Reed has some kind of hand in taking down Doctor Doom. Okay. So events in Marvel clarify what matters, strengthen the heroes and teams, institutions and teams, reassert what you want your moral center of the universe to be. Make some impression on the world. Do something. Make a change in that universe. Okay. It doesn't always mean you have to kill somebody. Like, y'all killed Black Goliath for no reason in Civil War. Civil War 2. They killed Black Goliath. No, Civil War. They killed Black Goliath for no reason, just because they're like, hey, nobody's reading Black Goliath. There's only one person on the planet who actually has a couple of more than 3 Black Goliath comic books. And so we're just going to kill him. Doesn't always have to kill somebody, but at least leave some kind of changing impression. Okay. The problem is, a recurring thing in these crossovers is elevation through diminishing the main foil. One World Under Doom absolutely made Reed look like an asshole. It made him look like a goof. He looks stupid. He's ineffectual. Like, Sue should leave him tomorrow. Like, why is she with him? He's a bum. You know, it was that kind of feeling. And so um it didn't feel important. Like, it didn't feel like Reed was even important to that story. Um and I may be biased because, like, Ben Grimm is one of my favorite characters of all time. Spider-Man, and Ben Grimm and Moon Knight, and Black Panther and a couple of others. Okay. Um, but they made the Fantastic Four have no value or worth at all in that story. And for me, um, the frustrating part about it is, like I said, we're talking about Marvel's first family. Okay. The ones that are considered the OGs of the superheroes, the ones that you bring in when you're facing something that you need, something extraterrestrial or something that's so overwhelming. You bring in the Fantastic Four to help out. They completely jobbed out Reed in One World Under Doom, made the Fantastic Four look ineffectual like a bunch of goofs, couldn't even save their own kids. It was embarrassing. And I don't necessarily know what the entire purpose of including the Fantastic Four in One World Under Doom was, just to make them look like idiots. Why would I pick up another book from the Fantastic Four if they were completely and totally useless against their villain, their dude, their guy? This is your guy. Okay. And so they diminish the Fantastic Four. Legacy characters are hollowed out instead of really challenged. We're battling ghosts of these characters at this point. They made the Fantastic Four incompetent, blah blah blah. Okay, so the examples I have are gang war, all noise, no consequence. I still don't know why gang war happened or what changed after gang war. Madam Mask is still running around doing things. I don't understand what gang war was before. One World Under Doom. It started out good. It really did. And I was excited, and then it just petered out. And Age of Revelation, I don't know why this thing exists. I don't know why we had to stop the entire X-Men line for this. Make this, if you're going to do, like, if you want to celebrate Age of Apocalypse, great. Please don't stop the entire X-Men line to show us this shit. Don't do this to us again. Let the X-Men books continue on. They're already doing some good things. Like, they were kind of trying to redeem the From the Ashes era. Eva Ewing's X-Men book was good. Gail Simone's X-Men book was good. We were doing interesting things. And then they had to stop for Age of Revelations, and Age of Revelations is mildly cheeks. Don't do that again, please. The Ultimates version works. There's clear premise. There's real consequences. Stories make sense. They're trying to establish some themes. They're trying to establish who's a counter to who. Events feel like they're actually building towards something. And I feel like the Ultimates line is better because I know that whatever happens in there is probably going to be permanent, and it feels like each story matters. Okay. I don't know. And I'm just firing in the dark. I think a lot of this comes down to editorial and corporate decisions. And so it's not necessarily on the creator's fault. It's not on the creator. They still have to maintain what the editorial gives them, and what editorial is going to give them is still guided by some corporate person who is looking at watching a line waiting for it to jump. Okay. They're trying to force alignment with some movie aspects of it. We've been seeing how some characters start looking like their movie counterparts. I'm not necessarily mad about the Black Nick Fury. I do think Nick Fury as Samuel Jackson was like this weird perfect casting that makes sense in hindsight. But I do, there's elements of it where they're trying to merge it and make the book more reflective of what the movies look like. And I think it's because they're trying to bring in more fans or whatnot. And I don't know if the crossover is there like they see it. Comic book nerds, if we're into comic books, we're going to go out and see the movies. Okay, that's just it. More times than not, the movie heads aren't going to drift over to the comic book side of things. We're the ones that cross over. And so I almost feel like um when it comes to merging universes or trying to bring things in alignment, it almost feels like the movie should follow the books in alignment, um more than the movies dictate where the books go. I don't know. And so it just feels like this erosion of trust. I'm not necessarily excited when Marvel announces a newest crossover event because I know it's not going to move the needle. Okay. So if your biggest stories don't change the world, then the world's just kind of stagnant. Why are we having the big stories? Let's focus on more self-contained stories, Marvel. And maybe one of these days I can come in and consult. I would love, cross my fingers. Maybe I can come in and help out with that stuff. All right, we're chugging along. How fucked are we? So again, Mojo World. That's kind of where we're at. We exist in Mojo World, where a petty tyrant who is misshapen, orange, and corpulent is basically running us, speed running us to the apocalypse. So, 60 minutes saying 60 minutes, who is, yes, they're corporate media. The corporate media is problematic in and of itself. I'm not going to front on that end of it, but 60 minutes does have a standard, and they've been kind of held to this. They've been kind of this standard in journalism for a while. They kind of let their investigative reporters go out and do their own thing. You don't have to deal with a lot of editorial oversight. They have been done stuff that's critical of their parent network and the corporations that own it, and so there is a standard at 60 minutes. And you're dealing with real journalists at 60 minutes, where people have quit over the last couple of years because of frustrations with the editorial direction of 60 minutes as of late. And now we're really getting to see a real manifestation of it. Um, Barry Weiss, who, those that don't know, I don't know if her job is to be the the, the liberal spin on Trump to make him more palatable to uh, people that aren't on the right wing or whatever, but that's been kind of her occupation, where she's kind of like, he's not so bad. She'll say just enough that's critical so that's believable, but then she hedges. So she is currently the news editor of CBS, Paramount CBS or whatever. And there was a story that was coming out that they were developing, and I want to make sure I get the name of the reporters right. But basically, they're talking about what happened with these Venezuelan immigrants who got deported out to El Salvador, I believe, and spent time in an El Salvadorian prison that's known for rape and torture and all kinds of other awfulness. And so she's interviewing them and telling their story. Okay. And Barry Weiss spiked the story. And the reason why she spiked the story um, is because she said that because the administration did not comment on the story, that she didn't feel comfortable letting the story run. And that's bullshit. I'm sorry. When a source doesn't comment on a story, you typically still run the story with and notate that we reached out to such and such for comment. They have yet to get back to us. And then if that person gets back and corrects the record or something, that's when you run a small retraction or run a retraction saying, this is something that we missed on this story, or this is some new added context to the story that gives a little bit more shape to what the story is. It's Sharon Alfonsi. They spiked her story where she's interviewing these Venezuelan folks that were tortured in one of Trump's prisons down in El Salvador. Okay. And the reason she gave was, well, the administration didn't sign off, which essentially says the administration has veto power on what stories that are going to air on CBS News. They have veto power. They can spike any story that they want for any reason. And the reason why they can spike it is say, we're not going to give a comment on it, and she'll bury it. She won't air it. And a lot of this has to do with the thing they were leveraging with her is, yes, she was critical of the administration, which wasn't really critical. It's kind of soft pedaling them, but it was, she had unfettered access to the president, and so that elevated her as a journalist. There are more talented journalists out there. There are more journalists that have more integrity than she is. But since she had that access, that provided her this elevated level where people listen to her a little bit more. Well, so now if she is the editor of CBS News, she'll spike any story that looks like it's critical of the administration, as long as the administration doesn't give a comment on it. You're setting up a very, very weird paradox and a slippery slope. They have a kill switch on anything that they don't like. Okay. And so basically it's they're trying to manage our reactions. Okay. They're trying to manage our reaction to this thing because she knew the story was going to be a pipe bomb. She knew it was going to be something that people latched onto and say, "Hey, they're torturing people in our name." Because typically, that's what turned people against. If you're too young to remember this, that's what started turning people against George W. Bush and Dick Cheney when it got revealed that they were torturing people in Guantanamo Bay, and they lost a lot of their support behind that. And so it was a lot of reputation management. And so they're trying to mitigate our response to this horrific thing that's being done in our name. Now, they also know that this country has a lot of sociopaths in it who don't really care about who gets hurt in our imperial quest to do whatever we're supposed to be doing. But there's also a good chunk of people that actually still do have some kind of moral connection to their humanity and don't want to see people that have not really committed any real serious crime or any crime at all, or anybody for that matter, get tortured. They don't want to see their fellow human beings suffer torture. And it's not just torture. We're talking about sexual assault and other things that occurred to those people. She spiked the story because it doesn't paint the administration in a great light. And that sets a very bad precedent. So that's how fucked we are. When the White House can kill and spike any story that they want to, we're in a Mojo World level reality distortion. Okay. I think this is my last segment. No, I got one more. Next segment is called Words Mean Things. We talked about it last week where we discussed the difference between a leftist, a liberal, conservative, and neoliberalism. We discussed all of that. If you're looking for that, you can always go back to last week's stream. I'm trying to keep up with clipping these as they come out, y'all. So I'm going to start posting segments of these or maybe entire edited versions of the episodes. I need disk space. So I got to buy a couple of hard drives to do that. Okay. Words mean things. Today's question, today's words mean thing is going to be abbreviated. Begging the question. Whenever I see or hear, and there's a lot of people I really, really respect on social media, and a lot of people who I'm big fans of, like on YouTube. I consume their content. I enjoy watching them. I enjoy them typically. Every time y'all say begging the question, I want to gouge my ears out. I want to take pencils and jam them in my ears. It doesn't beg the question. It raises the question. It does not beg the question. It raises the question. So this thing that makes you ask a question or leaves you with a question that you want to ask, it doesn't beg the question, it raises the question. Please stop saying it begs the question unless you are talking about circular reasoning or a logical fallacy. Just stop. I'm asking you. All right. Words mean things today, y'all. So the common misuse of begging the question, you're using it in substitution of raising the question. This is precision does matter. For me, at least. And it's up to you. If you want to say beg is a question, knock yourself out. You're talking about logical fallacy as far as I'm concerned. So the difference between begging the question and raising the question, I want to be precise on this. Raising the question means this brings a question to my mind I want to ask. Okay. Begging the question, I'm going to pull up the real definition of what begging the question is, because begging the question is a logical fallacy. In our modern parlance, the way we normally talk, modernly, people have substituted begs the question for raising the question because begs the question sounds a little bit more classy, but it's not. Okay? Begging the question is a logical fallacy, a logical error where the opponents, where arguments, premises already assume the truth of a conclusion, essentially arguing in a circle and failing to provide real support for the claim. Okay. It's like saying I like pizza because pizza is delicious, or you're saying pizza is delicious and I like pizza. You're basically assuming something's already true. Okay, so let me give you an example of a begging the question fallacy. Okay, I can't zoom in on that. So basically, and you guys can't see that. I need a bigger picture. So I'm trying to find an image that can illustrate the begging the question. And the image I had is not big enough. Essentially, think of when we talk about begging the question. Remember that time when your parents used to, when you asked the question, your parents said, "Because I said so." That's begging the question. You said why? Because I said to do it. That's kind of a begging the question thing. So I'm back. I'm joking. I'm halfway joking. I'm gonna pull it up here and show it to you guys though. All right. As we can see, begging the question fallacy, an attempt to prove something is true while simultaneously taking that truth for granted. So we see the argument. It's time for you to go to bed. The kid asks why, and dad says because it's your bedtime. Okay. I mean, it's not a bad reason. At bedtime, you go to bed. It's not a bad reason, but he's not necessarily providing a real why, a real answer to that question. Okay. And so it's a logical fallacy. So I'm going to get into one that's a little bit more spicy, because that's what we do on this show is spiciness, I guess. We're going to open this in a new tab. So y'all are about to see one. I'm not going to go too far into it because you guys are able to read for yourself. But begging the question is this. Begging the question, the definition, begging the question of fallacy occurs when the conclusion is assumed to be true in the argument's premise. So you're having a premise, you're in the beginning of your argument, you've assumed that you're just assuming that your argument is true. Example, murder is always morally wrong, therefore abortion is morally wrong. That is begging the question. Okay? It's logical fallacy. It is not raising the question. So please stop saying it. Just please. Find something else to say. Just say this raises the question. It sounds just as smart. But when you say this begs the question, that ain't what that means. That is not what that means. Okay. So understand that words do mean things. And so I know that while we're talking about what's happening in popular culture or what stuff like that and things like that, begging the question is kind of a trendy way to say it raises the question, but they're not the same thing, y'all. Just stop. I mean, I'm asking y'all don't have to listen to me, but that's kind of what that means. Okay. Ask a dad. So basically this goes into how do we raise kids in this world where the truth ain't where there's no objective standard of truth? What do we do? And so you're watching the news and you're trying to explain to them that the news is supposed to be a source where you could tune in and understand how the world works, but there's a lot of lies and things that are lies by omission, and people external to the reporters themselves may be shaping agendas. Okay. Um, how do we raise kids in this world where where reality ain't reality necessarily, and we can't agree on a standard of reality? This is where we do teach pattern recognition, but we teach pattern recognition with the moral anchor. Okay. What that means. Conspiratorial thinking is our overactive pattern recognition systems. Um, and more times than not, when you are in a conspiracy or entrapped in a conspiracy frame of mind, more times than not, you've lost what your moral anchor is. There has to be some standard that you latch onto to keep you from drifting too far into all this conspiracy minded think. Okay. And so more times than not, a good mechanism to use to define to really establish whether you are kind of trapped yourself in this weird conspiracy brain thing is, if this conspiracy I believe was proven to be true beyond a shadow of a doubt, it was proven to be true, this horrible conspiracy that I believe is taking place in my mind, if I believe this is true beyond a shadow of a doubt, am I upset, or we can do the inverse. If this conspiracy I believe is proven to be false beyond a shadow of a doubt, am I relieved or upset? If you relieve this, if this conspiracy is proven beyond a shadow of a doubt to be unequivocally false, are you relieved or are you upset? If you're relieved, you're not invested in the conspiracy on that level. If it upsets you that this conspiracy that you think is so evil and so wrong is proven to be false, if it upsets you, then you're too invested in the conspiracy theory. Okay. Um, and so the different things I have is teaching kids pattern recognition, but providing some kind of moral anchor, some kind of framework so they don't get too far into everything they don't understand being a conspiracy. Um, I talked about it with my boy Fearless this morning. We talked about the attention economy and how integrity is cheap in the attention economy. Um, you have to really take steps to prevent your kids from being addicted to attention in that spotlight. Social media does a great job of making people feel like they are the center of the universe, and the main character of the earth. And so you have to really be staunch against that. And sometimes it does involve restricting or limiting access to these social media channels, because attention, or if you see them making content for social media, make sure that it's not this damaging, chase down attention by any means kind of stuff, because there's that does damage kids a lot, is the attention and the instant celebrity and notoriety that social media provides you. And I'm not just saying kids, are adults that have screwed up their lives immeasurably by chasing clout on social media. It's very destructive. So protecting kids from that attention economy and the addiction that comes with seeking attention at all times. Um, Keeping identity separate from performance. It's really easy for kids to get locked into these parasocial relationships with these people that they see online, not understanding that oftentimes these people that they see online, especially the really popular ones, have cultivated a character. This is not who they really are in real life. This is a character that they put online that works to attract people. Okay. So really being strident in that, like, this person is not real. You do not know this person. This person is a complete stranger to you. Okay. And understanding that just like the actors they see on television, a lot of times the people they see on social media are actors in and of themselves. Um, and understand that we're raising humans, not content. You know, my kids have asked to be on the show and stuff like that, and I've been back and forth on whether I'm going to have them on here. My daughter wants to get on here and talk politics. I want to, but at the same time, I don't want to make her a piece of content in here to be consumed. Okay, that's really what it is, y'all. And it's a slippery slope. It's a weird world in this attention economy that we're up against right now, because people will do anything to be in that spotlight. And more times than not, they're not even really getting anything out of being in the spotlight. It really is just a matter of um somebody gives them a like or a thumbs up, and that's enough for them to go um absolutely completely show their ass and embarrass themselves on social media. It is what it is. But that's how we protect kids in this attention economy. Um, we let them know what this is, and let them know that yes, the intention is there, but it's not lasting. A lot of influencers are broke. Some streamers have made money. A lot of these social media influencers are broke, or they're morally bankrupt. Well, they'll do anything to get in front of the spotlight. I think that's one of my problems on this channel. I don't necessarily do a lot of the trend seeking stuff. and so that does hurt me. Um, Last thing, and this is just something I've noticed, y'all. So I'm a gamer, but I'm not in the gaming space like that. Okay. I really not. I'm not in the gaming space like that, like where I'm consuming a bunch of gaming content. I watch like VODs on like Overwatch and stuff because I'm trying to actually get better at the game, which it's really been a thorn in my it's been a thorn in my relaxation existence. Like it's really um damaged me in a way that I can never get back. But I consume like content about the games I play, maybe strategies and stuff. I'm not present in a lot of the discussions around games and systems and all that other stuff. And so I'm sitting there. I still have my PS4. Like I'm a PS4 player. There's a couple of reasons why. I'm a dad with two kids and a mortgage and stuff. It's very hard for me to really feel comfortable saying I'm going to plunk down. At the time when PS5 dropped, it was like 500 or 600 bucks. I had it. I didn't. I was like, I don't want to plunk down 500 or 600 bucks for a video game system. I just don't. When mine works fine. That's one. And then two, I like the games I like, and I don't necessarily need to upgrade my I don't need to upgrade to a new system quite yet. But for me, it's more of a matter of economics. Like right now, I have money invested in businesses, and it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to take money and divert it to purchase PS5 until we have income from a business venture to pay for PS5. And so right now I'm still on my PS4. It is what it is. I'm not normally in the gaming spaces, so I didn't know that everybody hated PS4 players. I did not know that was a thing. I didn't know that we were the bane of everybody's existence. I didn't know that was the problem. Um, but apparently we are. They don't like us, and so I found this out earlier today. I'm scrolling through the PlayStation store and I see, ooh, Marvel Rivals is on PS4. Wow, okay, cool. I thought I would have to upgrade to buy a PS5 or fix my PC so I can play it. Cool. I'm gonna download it. And while I'm downloaded, let me hop on and look at some strategies and stuff and see what I need to know about the differences between Marvel Rivals on PS4 and PS5 and on PC. And apparently that was a mistake because instantly I got blitzed with YouTube video after YouTube video after YouTube video telling me how awful telling me how awful telling me how awful PS4 users are and how they're ruining the gaming experience and all the other stuff. And it was really kind of an interesting thing because I didn't know we were the villains. I didn't know PS4 users or even last gen console users were the villains of the video game world. So anyway, so hopefully I could get on here and start playing Marvel Rivals. I didn't know that. Like I said, I am completely outside of that context, and so I don't know. It feels like there's some rage baity stuff going on because a lot of a lot of PS4 users were banging on these people. They're saying, "You guys are a bunch of brokies. Go buy your PS4. How can you not scrape up $500 in 5 years? You should want this thing more than you want to pay your rent. I guess I don't know. It got ridiculous, and so I'm still new to this. So if you see footage from me playing Marvel Rivals, it's going to be on my PS4. Bite me. I don't care. If you don't like the graphics or why the graphics so laggy or stuff like that, I don't care. I'm having fun. I'm enjoying the game. But I will buy a PS5 when it makes sense. When I have like if this platform allows me to purchase a PS5, then I will. If you guys want to fund a PS5, hit your boy up. I'll start a GoFundMe. You can buy me a PS5 so we can play Marvel Rivals. But I think it's kind of a rage baity thing. All right. Just curiosity. I'm not making fun of PS5 players. I'm not busting your chops or anything, but I did not know that you hated us like this. And I apologize. I'm not buying a PS5 until I'm ready to buy a PS5. And maybe by the time that rolls out, it'll be a PS6, and I'll just buy a PS6 and skip the 5. Totally. I don't know. Anyway, I do appreciate y'all tuning in. Thanks for listening to me ramble and rant. I've been on stream for about this is like my 6th hour being on some kind of web conference or live stream today, and so I'm kind of a little bit squirrely. So I do appreciate y'all tuning in. I'll get up with y'all later. Be easy. Read comic books. And I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.